May I have your attention, please? Okay, so the next speaker has been working in testing automation for the last 9 years, and he's going to be speaking about the risk we take and using Ruby in system testing. And please welcome Stephan Kämper.
Well, can you hear me? Good. Thanks for the introduction. I'm going to talk about testing large systems. I'm not talking about huge class or something, but really think more like really huge systems, like, for example, a mobile phone operator or something like that. I'd like to focus on an issue that I see with large projects and the context in which they're running. And being the automation guy that I am, and as Mats already indicated, programmers are lazy, and so am I. So I rather program the computer to do my job rather than doing my job. And it's a lot more fun. So I think for large systems, as well as unit tests, and I think automation is the answer to quite a few problems. And I've worked on a framework just now because I just left my last large project. And my apologies certainly to Mats, because I didn't find the proper name for it. And the reason for that is I'm not entirely sure about what it should do or shouldn't. So I absolutely do think that Ruby is ready to be used in enterprises. And one of the reasons is that these two books published by the pragmatic programmers are there. I mean, they are called the pragmatic for good reason, right? Because they are, and they wouldn't publish a book which is not going to sell. And if you work in some form of enterprise and would like to use Ruby, I think these two books are a really good recommendation. They help you to integrate about everything that you might come across. So when the topic of risk occurred to me when I went to the last European Ruby conference that took place in Munich, and we approached this scenery similar to this, and my colleague said, "This looks freaking dangerous." Now, I thought, well, why is it? I mean, it's just autumn leaves. Why is this dangerous? And then I realized that he was carrying the single beamer for this conference and his MacBook in his backpack. And then slip on leaves or wherever, and that puts you into ruining the conference for everyone. Talking about ruining or saving the conference, this seems to be the conference of device supply. So I say thank you to this nice fellow who gave me the VGA adapter, which proves that the Ruby community is a nice one. Back to this. So this, I think, makes it clear that risk is in fact a matter of context. I mean, if these steps were completely ice covered, the danger would be pretty obvious. And if it's not obvious, there still might be a risk. Only if you don't see something, it doesn't mean it's not there, right? So it's a question of the environment. Are your systems running stably? Do you have a permanent network connection? And believe it or not, I worked for programs and in project that didn't have it. So I think you need to be ready to take everything. Another question that I think is very important in assessing risks is, what do you have to lose? Is it one customer? Is it convenience. Might your email client crash every other week? That's not nice, and I wouldn't like to use such an email client. But hey, it's just a crash in 2 weeks. If your airplane crashes because the navigation system is built in the wrong way, that's an entirely different story, right? But it both goes back to one software defect. So I think that matters. And additionally, it's your perception of the situation that does matter, and it's also your experience to deal with this particular situation. I mean, airplane captains, they usually don't train day-to-day business because, well, flying planes is the day-to-day business, right? What they do train is the correct behavior and the right behavior in severe weather conditions, during airplane crashes, landing on water, and things like that. So, going back to projects in large companies, what I saw happening is that project usually grows in time, in staff, and there's a lot of effort put into forecasting risks. What might happen? This developer might get hit by the proverbial bus or whatever. And I think you start to get kind of paranoid about all these risks. And that means you see problems everywhere. And that means you need to write more Word documents instead of trying to deal with the risk in a training kind of way. That means you do more overhead work in projects where you use this heavy weightlifting stuff like rational unified process or, I don't know, waterfall, God forbid that. But that also means you have less time to actually train the reaction to the problem at hand. And I think I suffered a situation like this just 2 or 3 weeks ago when I made an appointment for a telephone interview for the next possible project, and on that particular day T-Mobile Germany's network failed essentially completely. And I sat there and couldn't they even write an email to me? Sorry, you know that I'm the boss of the company, a small startup. I can't manage to call you. There's important customer or something. And they, of course, said he's a complete chimp. He made this appointment for the telephone interview, and he's not available. So there's a big problem. I mean, if you have 40 million or so customers, and you manage to crash your HLR which is a home resource register, home location register, which is this system that knows how to connect your mobile phone to your mobile phone number and to the mobile phone cell that you're located in. So I saw the network, but the network just couldn't deal with me in that situation. And if you iterate over that, you're going to get, I think you're going to get more and more worried in future iterations. And the effect of that is essentially you don't want to be at that place anymore. It's like, I mean, my impression was I was feeling like running through syrup. It's just so hard to advance that I got unhappy, to say the least. So you might get the idea that I hate all this all uppercase process stuff, which I do not. I do absolutely appreciate these heavy processes running at automobile companies or airplane maintenance processes, because I don't want my stuff to break. But I do not think this is really necessary in all the enterprises that we do have, and it might well be worth thinking about not documenting the possible risks, but actually training to deal with these risks. And I think we're not doing. I mean, we are producing lots of money developing software. In my case, also breaking software. But it's in no way comparable to the automobile industry or to building railway bridges. And even building railway bridges wasn't an industrial production kind of things when they first started it, because if you look at history, many of them just broke under the load of the railways, because these steam engines were way heavier and incurring way more vibrations and all kinds of things on the bridges than anything that used to cross bridges before. I think what we're doing is manufacturing, in the sense of small groups of people working on one item at hand, or if you like, more the craftsmanship. And that's why I'm personally really excited to hear Philip's presentation today, which is precisely about this. My very personal solution to the problem of lacking the exercise to fail, well, is actually do fail. The more often, the better, or the more often you're trained to fail, the better. Get used to that. I think it's just like test first kind of process, like whatever you call it, behavior-driven development, whatever. But on a system test level, and do it often. I think there's really no point in executing one test case once in your testing time when you have, I don't know, half dozen, maybe 2 dozen deliveries of the software. And the reason for that is you might run a test case in the first week and everything's fine, and that happened. And then another defect gets fixed, which breaks the functionality of the first case. But you think, well, we tested this already, we're not going to do this again. But you better should, because the first thing that happened in one of the projects is that the production guys called our support team, and hey, why did you deliver this piece of software? The admin users can't even log into the system. And that was because this defect was, sneaked its way in after this particular bit of functionality had been tested. And you can easily avoid that by running the test case all the time you get a new software version. And of course, you can only do this when you have the test cases automated. It's as easy as that. And you certainly want to do this in a secure environment. And by that, I explicitly mean not in production. I've heard a way to, well, I mean, you're smiling, but I've heard the word, we can only test this in production. I think of it, test in production? I mean, come on, that's nuts, isn't it? There might be, and the reason for that is we can't afford another license of this and that software for the test environment. And the test environment hardware isn't even good enough to run that piece of software anyway. Rest assured that this is a situation I'm not happy with. But I am happy with actually doing the failing bit. I think there's nothing wrong with it, as long as you manage to fail with your sparring partner. You don't want to, have this miserable, I think it was a miserable experience for the guys at T-Mobile, to have to admit, yes, we lost connection to our 40 million customers. You don't want that to happen at all, I think. So I think your test environment should be very, very similar to your production environment. Identical, in fact. and I think you need to train to see how your software behaves regularly. Have the tests always ready to run. Have them scheduled in what have you, cron job or what every week or how often ever you get your deliveries. And it's just like, as I said before, it's test-driven design only on a system level, and I'm absolutely sure that you can do that, and it's good for you. Brings me to the word context, which matters a lot. It's just as the story with the stairs, covered in ice or not, or the danger of these autumn leaves on the pavement, depending on what's in your backpack, whether that's a risk to you or isn't. And context to me also means you better find defects as long as the team or the failure is still remembers what they did in the past week or a couple of weeks, because it's so much harder and takes so much more time to fix a defect that where the functionality was developed half a year ago. There's just no point. If you just start the test cases and find out that, oh well, we can't activate the 5 new products on our network, then the development team pretty sure knows how to find the issue pretty quickly. And given what Matt said, we need to build more software, better software, more reliable software, quicker. That's absolutely the way to go, I think. And again, the solution to that is obviously have the test cases automated, and you just click continue write more automated test cases, and then be really sure that this is actually going to work in your production system. And given that I've now have some time at my hands because I'm currently not having a project, I started extracting all this experience out of the last, I don't know, 5-6 years into a new framework, which doesn't have a name yet, which is very bad, as I just learned from Mats. But all right, let's call it ATFW just for the time being until I find the real name. What I want to create here is obvious and should be obvious from what I've said so far. Maybe just a few highlights on that. I certainly want to have the defects found at a time where the task at hand is still in the development team's mind. What I think is also very important is you don't want to have another test framework just because it's so much fun to build it. But I would like to create my test cases in Ruby, because I'm kind of sick writing test cases in Excel sheets or in specially made tools for managing test cases, where I can't even formulate trivial things like loops, if-thens. It's in some cases just not possible to have a branch formulate in these things. So I thought about creating a completely new language, but if I have Ruby in my hands, there's just no reason to do that. Wouldn't make any sense. And given Ruby's ability to load a file which defines a module and then include that module into a certain class or even a single object, makes it really flexible and very easy to create domain-specific languages. And what I also think is absolutely mandatory is create a very short and very simple to understand result of the test cases, because that's what your management is interested in. Are we green? Are we red? Are we, 80% of the test cases fail, or are we one test case fails and that's just, not as important? That's really, really important, and it's also very helpful to keep the results, preferably also all the log files that you might create and that you should create, to track history, because that helps you find spots where, say, applications where more test cases fail compared to other applications, and that helps you focus on the risky bits of your software, and that's what you want to do, because that's the efficient way to do it. And improving your best application doesn't help you create an overall better system. Improving the worst application, to the contrary, absolutely helps you improve the stability and reliability of your complete system. And by all means, I think you should log everything. It starts with date and time. I've seen functionality working or not working on a Friday after a nip tide on a Wednesday or something like that. It's just log everything, that all the information that you can get, and certainly, absolutely do log the software version information. There's and I mean, I'm the tester, you're the developers. Please give testers an opportunity to ask the software, hey, what version are you, dear whatever server? Because if you don't have that information readily available in the system that you've built, you depend on street talk, essentially. And then something doesn't work, and then you go say, hey, I think there's a defect here. Yeah, but in what version is that defect, please? Or is it, you tell me. Is it, well, I installed it 2 weeks ago, I don't remember. And, well, which source code, which version of your source code are you going to check then? All of it. And again, you don't want to do that. You want to know precisely what you tested, because that's going to help you a lot and save you a lot of time in fixing the defect, and get more work done. And you also should do some sort of journaling, as in modern file systems. Just say what you attempt to do, then do it, and then log the result. And the reason for that is, if you run the tests and the tested software on the same machine, which might be necessary if you are doing testing just a DLL or whatever shared library, or some library that you're using, that might crash your test environment just by, I don't know. In one case, I had a particularly formed string that just would make this XML parser circuits just crash. And at least I knew when the problem happened, and delivered the defect to my developer, and he forwarded it to the developers of that XML library, and after that everything was fine. So that's what you should do, by all means. I would like to write test cases in a way that's focused on business terms and system level. I'm not talking here about technical details or unit tests at all. It's not, is this method going to work? It's more about, is this workflow going to work in our environment? And this has to be easy to understand for all parties who have a share in that system. And of course, if I write test cases in Ruby, I can be damn sure that the developers understand it. I can also be pretty sure that the test automators understand it because they write it. And I think it's also a very, very good idea to help business people understand your test code, because, well, they are the main shareholders of the system that you're building. So that needs to be their language, and they don't care about object orientation or functional or what have you. They think a lot more in a procedural way, and therefore you hardly see any, method dot something dot this and that in these example test cases. It just says test cycle. That's like, think of it as a scenario, like more than one step in a larger context, which is what I'm thinking about all the time. And in one test case, that's for fifth line, it says I'm a new test case, and I want to load the interface nabob, which is just invented for new advanced, I don't know, mind-blowing online bank or something. And this language here is just, it's the business people's language. They see create new account. Create new account. Yeah, I think I understand what they mean by that. Find on page. It's words that the business people understand, and therefore I think everyone understands it. There's a few dots there. That uses config.system, and that's just use this particular bit of information from the config file. So I mean that's really not rocket science or anything. It's just I want the test framework to be completely separated from the system that I'm testing, because any dependencies there would just create so much hassle and make it less usable in the next project. So I really don't care about the bit on the right hand side, which is why the applications are grayed out. The interfaces are just plain old Ruby modules that talk to the system on the test on one side and use this configuration information, for example, and the methods supplied by the framework on the other side. So there's really not much of any kind of rocket science here. The state of the thing as a software development effort is, I for the time being decided to go with Git Central to host this, because I like the idea of open source software, which is why I'm sitting here. And it's not only an open source Rails application that they're using, I think they're using Gitorious, the Gitorious source code. It's also free as in free beer, even for a private project, which this currently still is, because I haven't answered every question that I want to be answered before I publish it to you guys. And one of the reasons is I haven't made my mind up about the license, and I think that the licensing of your software is probably just as important as a proper name, as Mats already indicated. I think if you don't have a license for that, just don't go public. Of course, you can always change your license for the software that you've built as the creator of the software. But I think everyone is going to hate you if you do that too often, because that makes you unreliable, and that makes you being a risk. And in the context of software development, you don't want to be the risk, right? You certainly don't want to be the risk if you build a test framework, you want to be a source of reliability, not risk. So I'm going to take my time and, well, apart from the licensing, I think the source code can be improved. And there's another question that I would like to discuss with someone of you, and I come to that point in about just a minute. So here are my questions. I'm looking for someone of you to help me discuss OSS licensing later today, maybe over the way too short 2-hour lunch, maybe over a beer in the late afternoon, early evening. And I would like to find a better way to encapsulate stuff. And what I mean by that is that this third line here, interface 1, that loads a file, includes the methods defined in that module in that object that I'm currently running. Well, that's all fine and well. If I then load a second interface into that context, that just works as well. It just, works perfectly. But currently, if I load the third one, and I do have some sort of cleanup code, and the third interface declaration is the same one as the first one, Ruby is so clever that says, nah, I've loaded this already, I'm not going to load it again. And while being terribly clever and a good idea normally, this is not working in this particular context because I expect this cleanup method to be overwritten, and that doesn't happen. And then I might have the interface 2 creating, I don't know, a database connection or opening a web browser, and then do the cleanup. And that's it. The method is not there, the object is not there. And so I would like to find a way to avoid that. And if someone's up and running with meta programming, which I'm not that much anyway, I would like to receive some discussion later. I think you need to learn to fail. As easy as that. There's an English saying, if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. And I think if you fail to plan to fail, you also plan to fail actually. And if you apply just some ideas of what I said today, I think your perspective for the future might be quite nice. Thanks for listening. Here's a few ways to contact me. And well, if you're looking for someone doing your test automation, you might want to give me a call. Right? That's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, any question?
Sure enough.
Hi.
Hi.
Being a tester, one of the main problems I encounter is how to connect whatever test system to my test code. So, for example, I might have a system with a test. I've got a thick client on the desktop. I've got a web interface over here. I've got maybe tool go to bring those things together, or will it be up to the user to then find a way to connect to the system under test?
Well, given that this is a framework extracted from experience, I of course expect a user of this framework to program the interface to the tested systems. because they are wildly different from one system or one application in a large system to the next one, to the next one. They are still using weird and old-fashioned things like soap, or some of you, the older ones at least, should have heard about Corba, and just you know, old-fashioned stuff. But the reason for not including this into the test framework is, of course, I don't know what system you have, or what I have in the next week or next month. Can be anything. If I'm lucky, it's sort of RESTful or some elegant things. But given that this is I'm working in the context of enterprises, things change very slowly, just as languages. Not quite as slow as languages, but a lot slower than the top-notch technology. I mean, we are all living at the edge of something, but enterprises usually don't. And the reason is they want to avoid the risk that comes with a completely brand new technology, even if it's going to help you. And they're not using this very early because I think they hate change. They're just afraid of using something new and fancy, even if it's going to be better. The only hope that we do have is that it's so good that they get used to it. And one way is just sneaking it in. But mind that you might run the risk of losing your job if you do that. So it's not always recommended.
The source code you showed looked very familiar to RSpec or shoulda or test unit. Could you explain a little bit why I would use or what's the difference between your framework and those?
Yeah, sure. Test unit provides nice log files, but I prefer to have it. I mean, if you're using test unit, yeah. Well, as far as shoulda is concerned, I just don't know much about it. I have to confess, I'm using test unit for testing this tests, and that can drive you nuts, by the way. RSpec, I don't fancy as much because when I looked at it, which is about a year ago, I found that it's not advisable, for example, to test Ruby code with RSpec, because it defines new methods in module kernel, and if anything is kind of wrong as far as I'm concerned in testing, that is changing the thing that you are testing. I mean, when you define a method in kernel, you change your Ruby environment, and that means if you're testing Ruby stuff, you're changing the thing that you're testing, and you don't want to do that. You want to test stuff that's identical in production and test. And with RSpec, that was not the case at the time that I looked at it. And other than that, I don't fancy the nearly plain English formulation of test cases. I think it's automated, it's a programming language, and as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't hurt me if it looks like a programming language. But it does hurt me if it looks like English but isn't. It's lacking the grammar, it's lacking proper capitalization, and I just can't remember where to put dots and underscores and spaces. I don't know, it's just not made for my brain. It just doesn't fit as well as Ruby does.
Could you stand up, please? Yeah. Thank you.
It's
Software development not being an industrial process, and then you said it's more like. Oh, now I hear myself. That's much better. It's more like craftsmanship or manufacturing,
Yeah.
and I followed you until the manufacturing part. So the craftsmanship, I think, is right on. I think of software development, judgment and experience are really key and are not emphasized enough, perhaps. But for me, manufacturing sounds just like the process that you may have been differentiating against. So I was just going to give you the chance to say more about big letter process and what software development is really like.
Well, I think all kind of software development, as we do it, is designing things. It's not like the mass production of automobiles or whatever, CDs or DVDs. If anything is industrial and software development, it's the creation from the DVDs that you distribute from the one master CD that you created. Everything else, as long as writing code is what you're doing, I think it's not really engineering in the sense that software engineering was used in the context when it was created in the mid-60s or something, in the context of huge governmental defense projects with thousands of man-days development time, and that's just not what, not even what large companies are doing usually, and that's why I don't like the idea of we are running the software industry. Yes, we are making loads of money with it, and I mean most of the time. Not we as developers, but companies running that software. But it's still not writing software and testing software is not as engineering as creating the next processor or manufacturing thousands of these processors. The defect.
Yeah. So, more questions. We are a little bit out of time, so perhaps last question, right?
Okay, I have the last question, and it may not actually have an answer. I work for a smaller company in California, and at the moment, we don't actually have enough money to hire any more developers, but we also have really fierce competition, and we're always sort of trying to catch up with the competition, and they're sort of trying to catch up with us in different areas. And the bottom line is we use all of our developing resources only to make new features and to maintain. And I cannot convince the management to actually let us really maintain an automated testing suite for this huge application. I mean, you can assume that it's just years and years of development. So to actually write this testing suite and keep it updated is really significant work. So I guess my question to you is, stuck in the same situation as I am, how would you convince your management to adopt automated testing? And are there ways to make it fast enough to be efficient financially?
Well, it's a very, very good question.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm really sorry for you. And that is one of the really, really hard questions. How do you convince management to put money and time and effort into testing? Certainly, if you just manage to get the things developed. And honestly, I don't have a real answer. Certainly, there's no easy answer. One answer will be, it's not the if, it's the question is when this is going to happen. When the big failure is going to happen. And I think it's has been proved throughout the history of mankind that you usually don't do much about avoiding severe problems or catastrophes, if you like the word. But you have to have them. You have to run into a very miserable situation and then realize, oh, I should have done this and that. Why didn't anybody tell me before? And the reason nobody does is nobody's listening to you anyway. I think you probably just have to be lucky to have management who sees the real value and the real time-saving and cost-saving effect of testing. And if they don't, good luck.
Thank you.
So, okay, thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.